More good news, Trump is killing off DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he's been coming for this pretty stridently. As you can see, the BBC complaining that Donald Trump makes, quote, two sexes official and scraps a bunch of DEI policies. And so he revoked a Biden executive order, which was aimed at preventing discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. It's like, okay, well, good, get rid of it. Trump also signed an executive order recognizing two sexes only, male and female, and declaring that they cannot be changed.
Perfectly reasonable. Isn't it embarrassing for all of Western civilization that this, this? Because we don't want to dunk on the United States solely, or I don't want to, particularly as they're sorting their shit out better than we are.
Literally met with a giant man in a dress for Burns Night. And it's just like, yes, and the Americans are way ahead of us on this.
Did you see him squirm when he was asked to define what a woman was? All that sort of stuff. So
he also said that 99.99% of women don't have penises, which implies that 0.01% of women do have penises, which they don't care.
There is a tiny, tiny number of people that have got a true intersex condition, right? Actual hermaphrodites. Yeah. So those people, that does exist, that is a thing in the world, but it's such a tiny, tiny number of people that the fact that it has to go all the way to the Oval Office, or all the way to number 10, and
the important thing about that is
madness.
The important thing about that is that those people didn't choose their condition.
Right. So they're not even...
Exactly. People don't get to choose their gender. These things are things that nature puts upon you before you're even born. So
it's a nonsense. It's a classic thing. When you look back through history, I think of the late Byzantine period, for example, but there's lots of in the late Ptolemaic period in Egypt, or perhaps even there might be something in younger people when you're confused or whatever of androgyny. There's been many fashions throughout history that lean towards androgyny. Okay, that's nothing new. Yeah. But to actually, for a man, the real problem, isn't it? It's men just claiming that they're a woman now, and that you're not allowed to question it, or it's a nonsense. It is ripping apart the nature of the very fabric of our societies.
Also, you're giving away for people who are prepared to do it, to take advantage of a system that will allow them access to spaces to which they ought not to have access. So male rapists being put in female prisons, for example, what a surprise they continue to rape women in prison. Actually, you shouldn't be allowing men to rape women in prison, so this shouldn't be something they can do.
So that's the ultimate problem, isn't it? It's not that just a guy wants to wear drag and insists on being called a woman.
Yeah, no one can stop you from doing that.
Right, yeah. Or a woman that just feels like she's very, very masculine, dresses as a bloke and has a short haircut and wants to be known as Dave or whatever. Okay.
Julie Bindle.
Okay, that's whatever.
Yeah.
But it's when men get access to female-only spaces and put them in danger.
Yes.
So that genuinely is a really terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah. And it tanked Nicola Sturgeon of this. But anyway, so the next thing that Trump did was to end DEI inside the federal government by cutting funding to all DEI programs across all the agencies, and a review of all the offices that have been renamed because of DEI initiatives, which is something they think they're going to try and do to be clever and get around it. And this means essentially voiding a bunch of civil rights nonsense. So there was... What's interesting, right? Now, I didn't know this until this came to the fore. But the Civil Rights Act only applied to civil society in the United States. It didn't.
It's the LBJ 1960s stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It didn't apply to the federal government.
Right.
And so actually, LBJ had to, for some reason, write an executive order to make sure that this was something that was done in 1965, which was still the law today, because of course no one had just bothered to revoke it. And Trump decided that, he was going to revoke that too. So now the US government actually can discriminate in ways that are prohibited by the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
Interesting. But it is interesting how they had a carve out for themselves, right? Like, you will all have the Civil Rights Act apply to you. It doesn't apply to the government for some reason. It's weird.
It's very, very interesting and good, in my opinion anyway, that Trump is revisiting stuff as far back as the 60s. Well, in his inauguration speech, he mentioned the Alien and Seditions Act, which
1799 or something.
yeah, the very, very end of the 18th century. It was John Adams, the first John Adams legislation. That he's going back that far, if needs be, in order to sort things out. That's great.
Yeah, it's superb. So Trump clearly is intending on just tearing this stuff up by the roots, and like you say, he's going back as far as he needs to make sure that this is essentially a colorblind, merit-based hiring system, which, fair enough. This is what has been stigmatized by the left as white supremacy, which I have no comment on, but I don't agree. I think it's actually a sort of neutral thing. But anyway, moving on. Pete Hegseth was the guy with the Deus Vult tattoos. Yeah, he was confirmed by one vote in the Senate to be the Secretary of Defense. So he's on it. And as you can see, no more DEI at the Department of Defense. The Pentagon will comply immediately. No exceptions, no name changes or delays. And so this has been the falling of the dominoes through the institutions, right? So again, the fish rots from the head, and so boom, begins at the top, knocks down, clunk, 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 and so you end up with DEI propaganda, if we can just play that with no sound, being shredded in the TSA. This is from a TSA agent. The Libs of TikTok got this video from a TSA agent at Colorado. As I know, we were instructed to remove all DEI signage from their operation areas following Trump's executive order. Brilliant. Beautiful. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see it.
I do hope that, if Trump and other countries in Europe are able to untangle and reverse themselves from all this nonsense, I do hope that in decades, if not centuries to come, it will be a tiny, tiny blip. That there was a small period at the beginning of the 21st century when Western civilization went down a terrible cul-de-sac, lost its mind on some level, or their elites did. The normal people never bought it, but their elites tried to do something insane briefly in the early 21st century. I hope that's all it is.
You know what? You know how we go back like 100 years and we go, wow, they actually had like mobile lobotomy mobiles drive around cities and just lobotomize people. How mad is that? How mad were those people? And in that sort of list of mad things we used to do, they're going to bring up a picture of the Biden administration with the transgenders on the White House lawn doing this. So, yeah,
right, exactly.
Like the transgender guy who stole the luggage, or Admiral Rachel Levine. Right. They're going to bring up that and go, look, this is a man wearing a dress.
People almost won't believe the image. It's like, wow, that happened.
Yeah, it's like, what, really? It's like when in like the 12th century, the papacy was ruled by pornocracy or whatever, or 13th century. It's like people are like, what, prostitutes ruled the Vatican? It's like, yeah, somehow, things have been weird.
7-year-olds were sent to work in factories till they dropped dead of exhaustion. Or whatever. It's like, wow, that was crazy. Yeah. That was a real thing.
And the Biden administration will, that I think genuinely, when historians write the period that we're living through, they won't really want to talk about Biden because he doesn't really do anything interesting. He will be a kind of sideshow character in the Trump story where Trump, sorts all the stuff out. And it's like, and so, under Biden, you had 3 transgender officials and various other things. And these things, bonkers.
Like the Biden interregnum.
Yeah. And it will be kind of there'll be YouTube videos done of, you will not believe just how crazy the Biden administration was. So like, my children's children will be like, 50 years ago, this, and they'll be like, what? No,
it was an anomaly, hopefully.
But it'll look like a clown show, it'll be like, and hopefully if we're lucky. And it looks like we're on the good timeline, so who knows? But anyway, so people in the institutions are trying to get around this. You can see, we've got to rename the DEI groups. No. Stand on your principles here. You wanted diversity, equity, and inclusion. Don't back down now. Oh, it's the accessibility group, bro. It's like, no, you liars.
That's a classic leftoid thing, isn't it? We'll just rename the thing.
Yeah. It's completely thing. It's just the Equal Opportunity Employment and Accessibility Group. Okay, everything named Equal Opportunity Employment and Accessibility Group, that's also gone. Like Trump, I think is, and you can see with Hegseth, I can't pronounce these names. They know that you're doing this, right? They are telling you they know, so and you're still trying to do it. right? They know the gig's up. The gig is completely up. Like, you have a wide awake administration in the Trump administration to this stuff. They know what woke is. They know the slimy games you're going to try and play. They know what your agenda is, and they're just going to grab it and pull it up by the roots. The Air Force doing the same thing. Oh, we're renaming it to something else, the Cultural Office or something. It's like, no. We know what you're doing. It's going to go. I'm sure the Trump guys are completely on this. I don't think they're being blind to it. Good on people, by the way, for making it very visible on Twitter. Make sure you tag the people who are in charge of the various institutions and agencies, so they can be like, right, that's the name of it. Brilliant. We'll get rid of those guys. And so this is all being done on the federal level. So it's like, where federal direct power is applied. But it's also happening in universities. Because universities, of course, get a lot of federal funding. And you can tell the people, oh, wait, we're where this nonsense comes from. We love this nonsense. Are we going to get defunded? And it's like, well, Rowan University in New Jersey clearly thinks so. Because they changed their DEI office they just scrubbed it entirely and just pretended it doesn't exist. Same with Colorado. And there have been a bunch of other universities. I've only just pulled up these ones. But they've renamed it to the Office of Collaboration. It's like, make sure that you make sure you record these things and send them, put them on the internet, make sure that people can see them. So the Trump administration can be like, that's it. Great. Get it gone.
That's not a loaded word. Collaboration. Like, that's not really, yeah. We see you.
Yeah. We know what you're about.
The universities are quite often, or in all sorts of ways, the wellspring of this sort of
it's completely
Marxist, neo-Marxist nonsense. There's all sorts of different words that can be used for it, but we see it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And the end result was that you tried to ruin the fabric of our society. You tried to make kids want to be mutilated and stuff. Terrible, terrible crimes. We see you.
Yeah. It's generational crimes that you're committing here. That's the thing. Like, you are doing things that are going to be difficult to undo for people's entire lives. People have been deprived families.
Number of lives that have been ruined, even in this small, hopefully historical blip.
Yeah.
Still, loads and loads and loads of lives ruined.
Yeah. It's really terrible. But anyway, so this is the what the government itself has access to. So the question is, can it happen to the private sector, which is what The Guardian asks. So they say, well, will this affect private companies? It's like, no. But apparently Trump has asked the Attorney General to look into ways it can get the private sector to do this as well. So it's like, Trump's like, no, I'm not stopping with just what I'm particular. No, we're going to try and get everything. And they point out that Trump's strong anti-DEI stance has led to what advocates consider a chilling effect. So companies have started to preemptively drop these policies. Like, if we want to get contracts with the government or something like this, we've got to get rid of this stuff. It was never good for business anyway. But when you had a Democrat in position of power who's going to sort of throw largesse at you for it, give you favorable contracts and stuff like that, it was worth having. We had lots of activists on social media, and the social media platforms were controlled by people who were aligned with the left-wing establishment. Oh, it's all very good to do. Now it's a right-wing establishment, and they're like, you know what? I think we might back off this. Forbes has got a great list here, and it's extensive. And this has been happening since the end of last year, after Trump won, obviously. John Deere, the farming manufacturing equipment company, have dropped it. Harley Davidson have dropped it. Jack Daniels manufacturers have dropped it. Ford have dropped it. Home improvement chain Lowe's has dropped it. Coors, the beer, after, I guess, watching what happened to Bud Light, they've dropped it. And they did, in 2023, they did a feminist-themed ad in the same sort of Bud Light vein. And then
Coors did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even see it, actually.
No, I didn't see it.
But they've dropped it. And this is like just completely rooting out the DEI stuff. We're like, we're not doing that. We're not doing pride marches. We're not doing LGBT flags. We're not doing any of it anymore. Walmart has abandoned it. Again, these are massive businesses. Massive, massive businesses. McDonald's has announced that it would abandon specific diversity targets, cease participation in external surveys about demographics, and rename its diversity team to the Global Inclusion Team. Like, so even McDonald's was like, and they, so back in 2017 or something, McDonald's was like, I can't remember where it was, but there's this one still of the McDonald's CEO giving a speech to a room full of people, and on the wall behind him, on the sort of telly screen behind him, is a modern progressive burger company. It's like, yeah, you wanted it.
Isn't it funny that it's things like Bud Light, Gillette,
Jaguar,
whatever it is.
to be.
It's surprising to me, anyway, I don't know how to say it exactly. This isn't, some people might pull me up on not really describing it properly, but sort of the hierarchical nature where you can, as you say, change the head out.
Yeah.
Literally the one guy that sits in the Oval Office, his worldview or his policies change, and like dominoes down the side of pyramids.
It's about the incentives. It's about being aligned with the ruling ideology of the power structure.
How powerful that is.
Yes.
We still live in such a structured society that Biden gets swapped out for Trump, and the bald at Coors just suddenly their whole worldview is changed, apparently. But again, or whatever. I mean, it's interesting.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating, and it's the way that the world works, and that's why. I mean, there are going to be loads of people at these companies who didn't want this stuff in the first place, but were like, "Oh, right, the Biden administration is very much on this, so we're just going to have to genuflect just to make sure that we stay in their good graces because we don't want investigations or civil rights charges or something like that, and we want to get federal contracts, and we don't want any trouble. You know, we don't want the media writing, causing public backlash against us. We just don't want any trouble. We just want to, sell our product, and so we'll just do it. And if it's now okay the other way, well, then we'll just drop it. And it's not that there aren't Ben and Jerry's aren't rolling back their DEI policies or anything like that, because the guys who run Ben and Jerry's are total ideologues who are insanely woke. But most of them aren't actually woke. Most of them are just responding to incentives and responding to the nature of the ideology promoted by the executive. And so they will just do what they want. I mean, like, for example, Meta, Facebook. Like, Mark Zuckerberg has done his little round on the Joe Rogan show going, "Hey, bros, I'd actually like to be a bro. I actually don't want to be a woke." And it's like, yeah, well, and his interview with Joe Rogan was really interesting because it was like, yeah, no, the Biden administration were on the phone shouting at me, do this, that, and the other, censor this, that, and Mark Zuckerberg, for all his faults, he's not like someone who is a Machiavellian genius. He was a tech bro who made something that got unreasonably popular, right? He was, he didn't seem like someone who was like, right, I'm going to take over the world now. It seems like kind of accidental to him.
What I find odd or interesting, rather, is what you're talking about there, the incentives. Yeah, totally makes sense. But not entirely, though, to my mind, because take, for example, Bud Light or Gillette, what they did. So the incentive is that they're mirroring or parroting the worldview coming out of the White House. That's the incentive. But they lost loads of money, and loads of their market share and all sorts of things. So in terms of money and market share, there wasn't an incentive. There was a negative effect. So it's difficult they did it just so that Biden and people in the White House were like, good boy.
No, not just that. There's a moral imperative in the ideology, right?
But at the cost of millions or billions of dollars.
Yeah. And
powerful stuff.
It is. Well, this is why people shouldn't underestimate the compulsive power of ideology, because literally it will make, and there are loads of examples of game companies and film companies like Disney losing billions and billions of dollars. Like, why? Well, we needed to put woke moral ideology into the thing. It's like, yeah, but you knew that was going to come with a cost. It's like, yeah, but we did it anyway, because otherwise we can't sleep. It's like, you being like, well, look, I'm just really against slavery. It's like, okay, but those, you own a bunch of slaves. It's like the American founders, right? They knew that, ending slavery would be bad for them personally. But if you view this as just this intrinsic and intransigent moral abomination that you have to live with, that you can't have trans people in Disney films or something, then yeah, okay, eventually you just get to the point where I've got to choose, and I'm going to choose what I think is right. And you're right, it's crazy how powerful it is.
The thing is, often that doesn't ring true. I mean, maybe Disney's or Ben and Jerry's, that is absolutely correct what you said.
It's not every case or anything like that. I'm not saying it's universal.
If you take someone like Bud Light or Gillette, where they fall in line with the new regime straight away. So they weren't actually dyed-in-the-wool ideologues at any point, actually.
The thing we've got to remember is there are various different levels, and a lot of the advertising people are insane woke ideologues, and they use essentially white guilt against the CEOs. And so if you've got a bunch of millennial non-white progressive people, they'll make up things. They'll be like, oh, well, actually, look at, they'll think of a viral campaign that was predicated on identity politics. They'll be like, yeah, see, so this can work and stuff like this. And a lot of the time it's basically kind of browbeating. from the people around them, and a lack of moral fibre and common sense.
Feels like what happened at Jaguar.
Yeah.
That the very, very top guys at Jaguar were browbeaten or guilted into doing...
I think the tech bros at Silicon Valley are the same. Like, I don't think Jack Dorsey himself was woke, but I think he was surrounded by a bunch of woke people. I think he was just kind of weak. Same with Mark Zuckerberg. I think he was weak, which is no excuse, obviously. But they themselves, I don't think, were in favour of it. But anyway, so Target as well, Amazon, there are loads. I mean, this is an extinction event for DEI. Right, which is great. There are of course, like, the Japanese who are fighting World War II 50 years after it ended. There are going to be some holdouts. For example, Costco. In a nearly unanimous decision, Costco's shareholders voted in support of Costco's current diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives after the National Center for Public Policy Research submitted a proxy proposal to audit the company's litigation, reputation, and financial risks. So they have decided, no, we are going to hold the line. We're going to be woke North Korea in the American retail business. And that's fine. We'll see how that works out, won't we?
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters. And if you want to see what else we're up to, you can always go to our website and check out Connor's series, Tomlinson Talks. This one looking at the grooming gang cover-ups. And if you want to see all the other things that we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.